Well, I can't stand here in defense of Alan Greenspan. He was also the man that rationalized the Bush tax cuts, which I think were a disaster. There were good things that he did over time, and I won't go into them one by one, but I think that was a fundamental error which has driven up our deficit, and it has caused a chain reaction. As America's debt has grown, with a president who was the first in history to call for a tax cut in the midst of a war, we have had to borrow more money from foreign nations. As a result, those foreign nations have looked for investments in the United States, and they have bought into the same credit mess that we are now seeing falling apart. So they were looking for a fast buck. The subprime mortgage and the mortgage security industry was considered lucrative in return and with very little risk, because historically mortgage default rates were so low. So I would say that Greenspan's decision supporting Bush on tax cuts led to that infusion of foreign capital and investment in these bad credit instruments. Community affairs. Back in the year 2000, Ned Gramlich warned Chairman Alan Greenspan privately that a new breed of lenders was luring many people into mortgages they couldn't afford. He agreed that subprime mortgages opened the doors to people with low incomes and poor credit histories, but he worried that many new subprime loans were too complicated and loaded with hidden risk. Exploding interest rates, hefty fees, stiff prepayment penalties that block people from refinancing into cheaper, more manageable loans. Ned Gramlich told the Fed chairman that subprime mortgages, quote, jeopardize the twin American dreams of owning a home and building wealth, end of quote. And he urged Chairman Greenspan to crack down on predatory mortgage lending. Chairman Greenspan said no. Regulated. No more blind faith in self-regulating markets. As Paul Krugman wrote earlier this week, don't expect to be rescued if you don't expect to be regulated. We need a solution to this that's effective and accountable. It must include smart, measured regulation that allows markets to grow in a reasonable, sustainable way instead of this destructive boom and bust. The rescue plan must include transparency and accountability, protections for American taxpayers who are the ones taking the risks, help distressed homeowners, which I'll address again in a moment, who are facing foreclosure, and no multi-million-dollar payoffs for the golden parachute boys, the CEOs and others whose reckless behavior helped to create this crisis. Sadly, this administration cannot see or bring itself to admit that this crisis is not an accident. It is not the result simply of incompetence, though that's a major factor. This crisis is the result of the failure of a radical economic theory, a belief in the ability of untended free markets to solve all problems, what some call anything goes capitalism, others call free market fundamentalism. Ronald Reagan summarized the soul of modern conservatism in his first inaugural address when he said, government isn't the solution to our problem, government is the problem. That, in fact, is the creed of the free market fundamentalist. It's a theory that substitutes free market cliches for realistic and honest economic analysis and common sense.